Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. Sitting inside the 2006 Chevrolet. It's a 2500. It's the HD. It's got the big 6.0. It's a snowplow truck. Oh boy. No miles on this thing either. Super low. 43K. 43,270. Lady has a problem getting the thing running. Listen to this. See if it does it, hopefully. Do a lot of cranking and then it starts. Sometimes it will crank twice as long as that, or to the point where you're like, something ain't right. You let off the key. When I first went to pull it in, really long extended crank, and actually a couple intake backfires. So we do have the note here from the other shop that it was at. So I'll read to you guys what parts they threw at it. None of the parts stuck, so she wants to find out what the world's going on here. Let's see, it's a handwritten slip, so we'll try to decipher through this here. It looks like they did a vent valve, canister vent valve, crank sensor, and cam sensor. So they did 3 parts, all new and all aftermarket. They have a note here that said communication codes did not return after repairing grounds and wires under fuse box. And then they give a list of these codes. None of which are communication codes. P2138, P2108, P1516, and a P1125. So none of those are communication codes. But at any rate, they have a note here that says the P0343. So that's going to be like a cam sensor performance or cam sensor circuit code of some sort of cam sensor code. Returns when hard start possible. Brain box issue, or as they wrote, possible ECM issue. Wiring appears to be okay between sensor and ECM. And then they have more notes over here. Hard start, engine light, several codes in computer, cleared codes, P0343 and 449 return. So 449 is going to be your classic Chevrolet vent valve, so that must have been resolved, hopefully. And then 343, like I say, something to do with the cam. It says here, check wiring to cam sensor, replace cam and crank sensor, code still returns. P0343, repaired chewed wires under the fuse box, several wires, labor 2 hours, $400, 36 cents, and it's still broke. So she wants to know what's up, but good clue that they wrote down there about the fuse box. So super common issue on these Chevys for that fuse box location for the critters to get into and just obliterate everything. So let's listen to her one more time here. So I was about the same as the first time. So still, you know, obviously an extended crank, and that's that. And the money light's on. So I did plug in the Altel. Let's go let that do a full system scan. I've got the battery maintainer on too because this thing's been getting cranked on. It says do not lock the door on a little sticky note here. No smoking right here. So no smoking and no door locking when you're in here. Alright, we've got the full system scan. These old ones take a while. Okay, there we go. So 343, so that's what the other shop said. And that says cam sensor circuit high voltage. So what can that mean? Bad sensor, broken wire, you know, missing a ground. This ignition failed, less tests failed, mill requested, sense cleared, failed. Right front speed sensor code. Oh, this is interesting. Well, that's a history code in the BCM for the power mode master input circuit mismatch. So keep that one in your back pocket. That's one I want to keep there in your back left pocket. 343. That's the little guy we're after. That will definitely, if you're missing cam signal or the cam signal's stuck high, these engines will start and run obviously without a cam sensor, but it takes them a while to figure out where top dead center is. That's usually what your cam sensor will do, kind of synchronize things, get it firing. So that's where the extended crank comes through, is it kind of has to guess, are we top dead center of compression or are we top dead center of exhaust? And you know, probably some kind of theory there. I imagine we're gonna have to get to the business. And to be honest with you, I have never, in my career of working on Chevrolets, I have never replaced a cam sensor in one of these. So I believe it is in the back. You know, I've seen them. but I've never seen one go bad. Now I've done crank sensors on the 6.0s, but they have to be super, super rusty usually, and it'll start pushing them out of the block or it'll break them. I think we even did a video on that once, but I've never seen a cam sensor fail, so we'll have to look into that. I imagine 3-wire Hall effect, you know, ground, you know, 12 volts or 5 volts, and then your signal wire. So anyways, I looked up 343 here. Let's see what they say. It says here, cam sensor works in conjunction with a 1X reluctor wheel on the camshaft. The engine computer provides 12 volts, so there we go, we figured out 12 volt reference to the cam sensor, as well as a low reference and a signal circuit. Well, that answers everything we just wanted to know. We have 12 volts, we have a ground, and we have a signal wire. So 3-wire. As the cam rotates, reluctor wheel interrupts a magnetic field produced by a magnet within the sensor. The sensor internal circuitry detects this and produces a signal that the PCM reads. So it just has a magnet that passes by, or the reluctor wheel interrupts the magnetic field that's produced you know, by the sensor itself, and then sends a, you know, its 1X signal to the PCM. And then it's going to utilize that to find, you know, top dead center in conjunction with the crank sensor. That's typically how they work here. So let's carry on. Cam sensor 1X signal is used by the PCM to determine if the cylinder is at top dead center, is on the firing stroke or the exhaust stroke. The PCM can determine top dead center for all cylinders by using the crank sensor 24X signal alone. The engine will start without cam signal as long as the PCM receives crank signal, all right, which we know because it runs. A slightly longer crank time may be a symptom of this condition. The system attempts synchronization and looks for an increase in engine speed, indicating that the engine started. If the PCM does not detect an increase in engine speed, the PCM assumes that the PCM incorrectly synchronized to the exhaust stroke and then resyncs to the opposite cam position. If the PCM detects that the cam position signal is constantly high, the P0343 set. So that's cool how it does it. And that would explain sometimes why it cranks a really, really long time, or sometimes it cranks not as long of a time, but still a long time. Because it can get the synchronization wrong, because the PCM has to take a big fat guess. It can look at the crank signal and say, hey, you know, I know where all the pistons are, I know they're at top dead center, but it has no idea if they're on the exhaust stroke, because it needs the synchronization from the cam sensor to say, hey, you know, we're top dead center of compression or it's top dead center of exhaust. So it appears that it makes an attempt to, you know, guess. That's all I do is 50-50 chance, baby. Tells us our code set criteria, what it does, turns the lights on, all that hoopty-hoopty. We have our flow chart of hopelessness, which ultimately ends up at replacing the PCM, the camshaft, and the wiring harness. So we're going to skip all the jargon there, and we're going to go right for the throat here. We're going to go back out of this. We're going to grab ourselves a wiring diagram. Oops, clicked the wrong button. We're going to get a wiring diagram. We're going to see where the cam sensor goes. Maybe it has something to do with whatever wires they found under there. The ECM is right here. Pretty easy to get to. Of course, we'll start with a bit of a visual inspection. OEM wiring diagrams, we're going to go OEM. That way, if there's a connector in the system, we can break it down. That's going to be important to us. So let's arm ourselves with a little bit of knowledge. We're going to go cam sensor. We're going to hit search. We'll find that. We'll get it printed out. And like I say, we're going to arm ourselves with a little bit of knowledge and come up with a plan and then execute the plan. So there it is. There's our wiring diagram. Pretty cut and dry, just like we read. We have our signal wire, our ground, and our 12 volts. And that's it. No connectors between point A and point B. The only observation I see here is the, you know, these two wires go into connector C1. That 12 volts comes from connector C2. So that's the only thing I observe. try to print this out here for us. Let's see. I just want to have a little look back here. I see it's got the classic, we don't know what's wrong with it, ground strap on it. That's what we call these things. When you don't know, just start adding grounds. Classic move right there. And then I see the oil pressure switch back here. And this is the wire for the cam sensor. Okay. Red. I can't see the cam sensor, so I can't tell if it's new. I gotta believe it is. I mean, I don't think they're gonna tell the lady that they did one. Wow, this guy's getting too full for that. Oh, gotta get the hook in the wiener. Let's pull this lid off and just see where that harness comes through. I should go get my topside creeper, but I don't think we'll be up there very long. We just got to see what we're missing. Imagine we're missing the ground. Oh yeah, look at that. Would you look at that? So that harness runs up from the back here, goes over to here, and this is where the bad stuff happened. I imagine we're going to end up back under that fuse box. It's going to be my guess. But let's find out what we're missing back here. Our 12 volt reference, supposed to be the red wire. Pink with black is the ground. Brown with white is the signal. So we've got this little guy, she's low current. Because our 12 volt is supplied from the PCM. The light lights up as bright as I would expect. Well, no. I guess not as bright as I would expect. Okay, the light lights up, but I hear, so the key's on naturally, but I hear something in the relay box clicking on when I'm checking the 12 volt reference. So that's a little peculiar. Let me switch to a battery positive. They're doing a little work outside, so it's a little noisy. It's just, this battery situation over here is straight up danger. It is. Moments away from explosion. Okay, the ground, pink with black. Not the best tool for the job here, but it usually works. Okay, that lights up nice and bright on the ground side. So that's a normal ground, ground, ground. So we're not missing the ground at the sensor. That ground comes from the PCM, and as well as that 12 volt source comes from the PCM. But what's curious though, like I said, I haven't fiddled with many of these on GMs because, I don't know, I just don't see them go bad in these engines. But what's curious is when I check it, something in the relay box clicks. Listen. It's the fuel pump relay. Yeah, I can hear it. That's crazy. And nothing on the signal wire. So that's a little bizarre. It appears that we have our 12 volts and we have our ground. Let's throw a little scope on there and see what's coming out of the sensor. Theoretically, it should work. Doesn't mean that the signal's making it back to the PCM. And the PCM is recognizing it as being high. Okay, let's do that. Let's just see. I'll turn the camera off here and I'll see if I can get some wire back there enough where I can get a test probe on it, and we'll see what's coming out of that and kind of take it from there. our test leads here. I put a T-pin in that brown with white. We're gonna go on the battery negative. And then I'm gonna try to reach back there, get that on our T-pin. Should just poke the wire, but being that this truck's sole purpose is to drive in salt, and there's not much holding it together right now, we'll avoid that. So I appear to be on that T-pin. I see some butt connectors back there. Let's, yeah, I know that stool is creaky. Harbor Freight should have sent me a new stool instead of a scan tool, huh? Let's go back here. Let's open up our scope. We'll hit play. We're gonna have to sign out of the truck. And then we'll crank it over here. Okay, so right now our signal is high. It's sitting there at 12 volts. All right, let's, we're gonna set this on a 20 volt scale, and then we'll change our time basis here. We'll go 500 milliseconds per division, but yeah, you can see that that's sitting high. You high? Let's start this thing up and see what's coming out of that cam signal. Absolutely nothing. Well, that's kind of weird. It appears to have everything it needs to work. Tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to shut the key off first of all, or shut the car off. Alright, so we turned it off. We're key on, engine off. What we're going to check is, I'm just going to check it with, we checked it with the test light. We know our sensor ground is good. Our 12 volts is there. What we're going to do, and it is stuck high, I'm just going to check it with the cam sensor itself in place. That is our load. There's no sense in substituting anything. So I'm going to set this up here, and then I'm going to get on a noisy stool, hang my guts over this thing, try not to catch the hook in the wiener, and poke down through those wires, and we'll see what it displays up on our tool. So right now we're in the brown with white, and we're seeing what we expect to see because the signal's not being pulled down. Classic reach around move here. I'm just going to pull out my T-pin, and I'm going to T-pin into the red wire, into the back. We're going to back probe it in there. Okay, that's back probed into there. We're at 0 volts there. I'm going to hook this back up. We expect to see 12 volts. And we do. We have 12.1 probably. Somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, and then we're going to back probe into the ground, and we expect to see 0 volts. If I can get her slid in there. And we do. We have 0 volts on that ground. 12 volts on a 12 volt wire, and nothing coming out of the signal. So what does that tell you? Super interesting. I'll tell you what it tells me. It tells me we got a crappy sensor, or the camshaft's not rotating. Oh man, right in the ding dong. Or the camshaft's not rotating, which we know it's rotating. Or the trigger's missing on it. I don't know. It's acting like a bad cam sensor, folks. Maybe it'll be my first day changing a cam sensor. Kind of suspect though. They put one in it. Now I'm saying it's bad. It appears to have everything it needs to work. Why wouldn't it work? What if there's a bunch of rust on the block? I don't know, can they hold it up out of the block and make it so the trigger doesn't pass? Let me get a mirror and have a look. So I look back there with the mirror. It is a new sensor. So that's good, at least they didn't rip her off. That's what you usually do when women come in the shop, you rip them off. That's what I'm told. Now we need to do the hokey pokey. Turn ourselves around. I think it's a 10 mil. I'm gonna try to get to the bolt. Everything is very, very rotted on this truck. Extremely rotted. Let's see, let's just take the hat off. We're gonna pull the bolt out of it. We're gonna yank this thing out. I can't tell if it's, you know, rust jacked back here or not. It is a 10 mil. A Lammeter. So we just took a bolt out of something back there. It appears to be a cam sensor. Give this engine a little hug. Oh, we got it out. Oh, you're a long one. Holy smokes. That's a big long one. I put a pad up here so it quit yanking on my ding dong. So there's our cam sensor. Interesting. Seals way the heck down in the block. Boy, it would have to have a fair amount of rust up on the top. I don't know, that tab's kind of bent. You can see where they frickin' jammed her down tight on there. Is it? Oh, I thought my camera was looking like it's kind of blue tinted. Let me get a mirror. Hey, mirror. I know you guys can't see crap, so you're just gonna have to go with the play-by-play. Oh my gosh. This thing, oh girl, that hole is crusty. That thing is crazy crusty. Yeah, this is holding that thing up out of the hole probably better part of 1/8 of an inch. How are we gonna do this, old son? Dude, this thing is rotted to heck, we'll call it. You're rotted right to heck. We gotta do it without dropping all this stuff down the hole. Let me figure out what we're gonna do. I assume this is why we have no cam signal. I don't know if we can straighten this. We're gonna try to straighten this metal tab out. They must have just jammed her down in there. They went full beans, but I think this is not working because it's too far away from the little whoop-de-whoop that goes past it, you know. The chunk of metal that disrupts the magnetic flux of this sensor is too far away to flux it up. I'm gonna figure out what I'm gonna do because I can't show you guys. Trust me, folks, you're gonna have to trust me. So there's the one, I know it's not gonna look, it's gonna look pretty petty, but that's the one fleck of rust. I mean, that thing is more than 1/16 of an inch thick. Hey, you probably can't see it past my corroded fingers, but there's one fleck of rust. Hear that? You hear how solid that was? I was able to flick it off with this little guy. Give it the flick back so it didn't go in the hole. There's a little bit more of it back there. I got to try to get it flicked off and cleaned up, but that piece was shoved under the tang here, so it certainly wasn't down all the way. We need to be able to tweak this thing, but we'll get her. So I scraped around back there the best I could. The real way to do this would be to remove the intake, but if you remove this intake, you're going to snap every single one of these bolts off if you can get on the heads of them. They're whittled right down to just about nothing, just from the rust. So I scraped it down, looking through a mirror, trying to keep all this stuff out of the hole. appeared we did a good job there. We'll get our mirror back. I stuck the sensor in. I put the bolt back in it. Now I just probed into the brown with white wire. That was our signal wire, right? I think so, yes. Yes. Sound confident, man, or people aren't gonna believe you. Put this thing back on before you start scaring the children. Wires are out of the way. Scope's up here. Is our scope still running? I think so. All right, fingers crossed, a little bit of luck, that's all it was. Oh, baby, Chevy Silverado. Oh, there it is, look at that. Look at that, old son. There's your 1X crank signal. Whoa, dude. Whoa, dude. So there it is, paint a picture across our screen. Scope works a little slow on this if it's not plugged in. We're just using it wirelessly, so. But that's it, 0 to 12 volts, or almost 0, we should say. Let's pick a different time. Let's go 50 milliseconds per division. And we are just off the ground, in case anybody's wondering. We are at 500 millivolts, so we're 500 millivolts above ground. And about 12 volts exactly, so there's that. So about 11.5 volt delta on that. I've been burned on Chevrolets before on a crank sensor. I believe it was one of these. I did a video maybe 6 or 7 years ago on a crank sensor that wasn't pulling all the way to ground but had a beautiful signature wave. You gotta look close. Oftentimes cams and cranks, they'll float them off ground just a whisker. Just a black one. Yeah, black one. Yeah, thick. Yeah, hold the shutter off. Go back on. That's it. Let's quit fiddling around here before something else breaks. Like I say, this thing is rotted. Every line, hose, connector, transmission tube. She's rough, and this is what you see on low mileage, particularly like plow trucks or trucks from the municipalities. Man, these things rot so bad. Bodies will usually look good. Interiors are always great, but so that's it. No parts required. Kind of a stupid video, but it's also a good reminder of see what you have. Look when you're doing some testing. What are you supposed to have? You got this 3-wire Hall effect. The thing that's weird to me is how come when I was testing the 12 volt supply, it was kicking on, the fuel pump relay? Is there? I would more tend to think that if the PCM saw a signal saying, hey, the engine's cranking, do something, turn on your magic. But I can't say I've ever checked a supply voltage going to a sensor and heard it kick on something. You got to be careful sometimes, especially if it's a pull down style. You're back there with your test light, you bump that signal wire. Sometimes the computer doesn't know the difference, and boy, it'll start kicking injectors, and worse yet, it'll start, firing ignition coils regardless of the cycle. And I've had a few little pop bang booms come back through the intake, scare the pudding right out of you. But so you got to be careful of that. But I can't say I've ever seen it just testing the power supply side. Granted, we were using a test light, 100 milliamps. So anyways, not going to look into that too deep. The truck starts and runs. That's what this lady wanted. I think it's time to flush this toilet. I think before I just saw a squirrel and got off on a tangent, I was going to talk about, knowing what you're testing. We knew we were going after a 3-wire Hall effect switch. So we just had to make our tests, write down or at least know what you expect to see when you're checking the 12 volt wire, the ground wire, and the signal wire. So we checked 2 of those. The 12 volt supply and the ground, and they both come from the PCM, so we knew that they were intact. We had enough signal or enough return low reference wire to light a 100 milliamp test light. Not the best method to use, but it worked. And then, you know, when we checked the power supply from the PCM to that,
yeah, it's all good.
you know, it kicked on, you know, relay, which again, using that low current test light, still not the best method. We should have I just wanted to do it that way because the connector is a pisser. What we should have done is use a scope or use a meter right from the beginning, plugged it in, back probed it, and see which wire was which. But it was kind of a pain, and this thing kept hitting me in the guts and or thereabouts. So we ended up doing that in the end just to kind of prove it. And then we got to a point where we're like, technically this sensor should work. Either A, the sensor's bad, or the air gap's way the heck off. And I'll be honest with you, first time I've seen rust on one of these engines actually pull the cam sensor up out of the block. So that sucker was super rusty. I wish I could have pulled the intake to Senior, but I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill. This truck is rotted. I mean, super rotted. And, you know, I know rust. But that's it. We're not going to talk about it anymore. It's a dumb video. Questions, comments, concerns, Insta, Facebook, you know. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.